I'm Ron Willett. Welcome to Whiskey and Wireless. We're going to sit down with industry professionals, have spirited discussions, and talk about what shaped the wireless industry and why we are where we are today and where we're going to be tomorrow. So you're a good example of it's a small world and it's a really big world, right? So I was at a Canto a couple years ago, I think, and I had come up, it was in Miami. I'd come back up and I went to an amusement park with my kids. This little rinky thing, well, it's huge, but it's an amusement park called the Fun Spot.
Yeah, smaller ones in Orlando. Right?
Yeah, right. It's no Universal or Disney, but it's called Fun Spot. And I was there, and I'm watching my sons on the go-kart things, and there's a guy with a Canto shirt, and it was you. And I was like, who's that guy with a Canto shirt? To my wife, and I guess your wife was standing right next to us, and she goes, "Oh yeah, he was just there." Blah blah blah, and so we start talking and everything. You get off the go-kart, we start talking and find out we're kind of in the same business, right? But I had known you from the CCA days, right? Back in when you were with Union.
Yep, exactly.
And you spent a lot of your career at Union Wireless, right?
I did. I spent 17 and a half years there
Wow.
at Union.
I was looking at your bio, the Whiskey and Wireless crew does a lot of research on people, right? And for you, it was like two jobs, right? You got right out of college and then Union Wireless and now at Comfone.
Yeah, it's a short, career path to talk about, but
20 years.
But 20 years of industry experience. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so a lot of people we meet in this industry, as you know, move around quite a bit, right? And then there's some people, like I've stayed at Clear Sky for 20-something years, and you've had the two jobs in 20 years. So we kind of get there and we just stick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So at Union, what did you start with Union? How did you start at Union Wireless?
I started as a computer programmer, software developer kind of is how I started at Union. And then there was a guy there that did all the roaming stuff. His name was Vishy, and he left the company after about 6 months that I was there, and I got all the roaming stuff from him.
6 months later, right?
6 months later, and it just kind of blossomed from there. So I got to know what roaming was, how to do it, how to test for it, how to negotiate agreements, and I spent the rest of my time there really running that part of the business for him.
Yeah, and I was looking too at some stuff, and you were on GSMA councils. I mean, you've been on so many different things when it comes to roaming for these regional carriers. It's really kind of cool that it just almost fell in your lap, I guess you'd say, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, yeah.
Yeah. And so when you got out of college, did you live, because Union Wireless is in Mountain View, Wyoming or something, right? Isn't that where it is?
Yep. It was about 2 hours from where I was living at the time. I was living down in Salt Lake City area in Utah.
Yeah.
So it's a drive up the mountains to Wyoming. And I found the job. It was just advertised in the paper. It was at the time where everybody was outsourcing all their tech to India. So it was really hard for me to find a job in the industry I wanted to work in.
Right.
In the computer industry. But Union was not a company that wanted to outsource anything. They're a company that...
A lot of regional carriers do that, right?
Yeah.
They hire within, and they like people to be there. That's part of...
That's part of their culture, right?
Right, yeah.
Which is great. I loved working there. I loved being with them for that. And so it was really good to get to know this company and this... Because it's a small company, it's a family, right?
Right, yeah. The Woodies.
The Woodies.
Yeah, anyone in the CCA industry knows the Woodies, that's for sure. So yeah, and that's crazy. We were talking before we started this just about the size of some of those cities that are there. And you said, it's almost the same square footage as Orlando, right? But much less people that live there.
Yeah, there's about 5,000 people. There's more cows than people that live in that area.
Now, I've heard, and I don't know how true this is, but I heard from someone that Eric and the Woodies, they have a farm that has a lot of cows, and sometimes they'll have to stampede or walk or whatever it is, those cows like through the city to get stuff done? Is that a true thing? Is that happens?
That's where you get your most traffic jam, is you're waiting for the migration of the herds to go from one pasture to the other.
I tell my wife when we travel to some of these regional carriers, it feels like not only is it a distance, but it feels like you almost are going back in time a little bit too, because it's just a different lifestyle than living in a place, in a bigger city like Orlando or, somewhere even bigger than that.
Yeah, it definitely is. And like I said, it was wonderful working there and being with them. And that lifestyle, worked really well for me. As a family man, I got to spend most of my time at home with the family. And so, it was just a great 17 years to be there.
And then you packed up and you moved, and it was funny. After we had talked, I went back to some of my notes and did and you and I had gone to dinner like 15 years before as part of some sales process that, I was probably trying to sell you something. And we had gone to dinner before, and I was reading those notes, and it was just kind of funny how it all works out. But then you move like 10 minutes away from where I live, and, we live in kind of a smaller town for Orlando, nothing like what you're talking about in Wyoming, but it's kind of funny that you chose. So what made you A, leave Wyoming, and B, pick Ocoee, Florida?
So leaving Wyoming was definitely a hard decision for us, but it was a decision made based on my wife and her need for a warmer climate.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about Wyoming, the summer's wonderful. The summer's great. You can go out and do fun things. You can go in the mountains. You can enjoy the outdoors. But then the summer leaves, and it's a short summer, 3 months. And then you're kind of stuck indoors the rest of the time, and there just wasn't a whole lot
right
for her to do or to see. So she was just stuck in the house all the time. And we joke about it, here in Florida, it's 3 months, you're still stuck indoors, but it's the summer months mainly.
Right.
And then the
it's
winter
too
months,
hot to go outside.
For most people. My wife still goes outside all the time. She doesn't care about the heat, but.
Yeah, I get used to it, but you walk out the door, and sometimes it just feels like you're getting punched in the face when you walk out the door, especially this year. But yeah, lots to do for the kids too, and just a lifestyle change for that. But everybody's you've been here how long now?
We've been here for 3 years now, so we've gotten used to the area. We like to explore a lot, so there's a lot of different places and we've been to.
Yeah.
People come to Orlando for the theme parks.
Yeah.
Well, we like to do things besides just the theme park. So, there's a lot of nature stuff to go out and explore.
Yeah, there really is a lot of old Florida stuff, as long as you don't mind alligators that are pretty cool. So, but you left Union, obviously, because you can't work there from Florida. And you got your new gig at Comfone, and you've been there a couple years too, right?
Yeah, I've been with Comfone for 3 years. It's been a wonderful company to work for as well. Mm-hmm. Union's a family-owned company. You talked about the Woodies, and Comfone's actually a family-owned company as well. So,
okay,
even smaller than Union is.
Oh, are they?
With
and
employees.
It's work from home too, right? You're not going into an office all the time.
Yeah. Well, for me, with my role, it is 100% work from home, unless I'm on the road visiting clients.
Which is kind of a lot, right? And that's where we talked about small world and big world, right? So small world in that I saw you at that amusement park and you live 10 minutes away, which is crazy. But big world in that I see you, both online and in person at the craziest places. So I remember we went to Bern, Switzerland. I took my wife and my daughter, and we went to the Comfone. What do you guys call that?
It's a connection event.
The connection event, and that was in Bern, and you were nice enough to invite me to that, and got to bring my wife and daughter, and man, we just had a really good time. And my daughter's like, what are some of the things you're doing here? And I said, well, one of the things I'm doing here is meeting with Randy, and she's like, well, doesn't he live 10 minutes away? And I'm like, well, yeah, but sometimes in this business, you see people all over. So yeah. And do you get to Switzerland a lot?
I go a couple times a year back to the office, and it's a good chance to meet my coworkers and get to know some of them that are newer and some of them that I haven't seen for a while. So
yeah, and then outside of that, it does feel like you go to just a lot of places.
Yeah, I put a lot of miles on the road. I still chair the North America GSMA was IDS group.
Hmm.
So I go to those meetings and I represent.
And those meetings are kind of everywhere, right?
They are, and the was meeting itself is really out there and everywhere. The next one happens to be in Rome. The one before that was in Dubai, and the one before that was in Bali. So it's all
Oh,
over the
the
world.
Bali one. I remember that one. You called me for something, and you were in Bali. I'm like, I don't even know if I can find it on a map, but that's that's pretty cool that you're going everywhere like that. So, and then for work too, right? Um, but then the other thing about you that I find interesting is, you know, and maybe it's judge a book by its cover thing, which I should, not do. But you don't look like a worldwide traveling soccer fan to me. But but you are, right? You've been to a couple different World Cups.
I have, and I found my love for soccer, believe it or not, of all places, in Brazil. Surprisingly.
Right, yeah.
So when I was 16, I went and spent a summer in Brazil with a friend of my father's. So I spent 3 months down there, and that was in 1994 when the World Cup happened to be in the United States. So I left the United States to go to Brazil,
And then the World Cup
and then
is
the
here.
World Cup was here. And had I known, I might have stayed for a couple games here in the to see the World Cup.
Right.
But Brazil won that World Cup. And so I was with the family, and we watched every game we could watch.
Oh, that had to be exciting.
Except for the final. The final happened to be on Sunday. We went to church, and so we didn't end up watching the final. But it was amazing. Once they won it, the first stop of their victory tour down in Brazil was where I was at. So I went to the parade, and so I had a love for soccer after that.
I bet. Yeah.
And
Seen it
I don't even
firsthand.
like to call it really soccer. It's futebol for me. But
Right. Yeah, I know. I'm a dumb American, so I can't get that out of my head. But yeah, yeah.
but yeah, so we've gone to the two of the last three World Cups. We didn't go to Qatar, but my wife and I went to Brazil in 2014, and then we went to Russia in 2018 with my whole family. I brought all my kids with me. And we had just adopted my youngest right before that, so that was quite the process to get him a ticket. So he was literally born in April. We saw a game in June. So
Oh wow.
so he was probably the youngest spectator
in
that
Moscow,
stadium.
Yeah.
In Moscow. So it was good. We
Yeah.
got to see Messi play against Iceland in that game.
That's awesome. I have a son that loves soccer too, and so Messi just played, I think, the other day here in Orlando, and did really well. And I think I'm gonna have to go see a game with him in it just to say you saw a game with him in it, right? That's
Yeah.
how important it is. And so from your background of working at Union Wireless, you do work with a lot of the regionals, and one thing you talk about is how many people live there. Well, I guess how few people live there to be correct, and that makes it very difficult for the regional carriers to make a business plan and to make it work. So I mean, you experience those challenges firsthand, I guess.
Yeah, and a lot of it was more the roaming that was coming in, but that's kind of changed in the last few years with some of the bigger companies building out and covering their areas. So there's the roaming business has kind of gone down a little bit for these regional carriers.
Yeah, where it used to be kind of the way they survived, and now they have to look for different ways, right? That's one of the challenges of the regional space.
Exactly. And the areas that don't have the regional carriers, you can tell the coverage is not quite as good because they're not pushing competition out there, right?
Right.
And so regional carriers are vital to our industry to have that coverage in the areas that most people don't want to deal with. Most of the bigger companies don't want to deal with.
Right. Well, it's just like I said, it's hard to make a business case of putting towers all over when you got a space the size of Orlando, but there's 5,000 people there. I mean, at an ARPU of $50, it's not a lot of money to pay back for all those services. But
Exactly.
And so in the regional carrier space, I mean, do you miss that? I mean, obviously you loved it, right?
Yeah. No, I miss it. Being with the people there was, that's what I miss the most is the people.
The people that work there, or the people in the
Both.
Yeah, because
Both, right?
we just hired Chip D'Amato, who used to work for Inland Cellular, and we were talking the other day, and he said, for a regional carrier, it's your way of life. Like you go to dinner and people are coming up to you either saying, "Hey, I have great coverage," or "Hey, I don't have
Great.
coverage." Like you
What are
can't
you
get
gonna do
out of
for
the
me? Yeah.
conversation, right? So is it really all the time conversation out there?
It is. You have all your neighbors that they know that you work for that carrier, and they come, "Hey, this is what's going on here." All of a sudden I'm driving along this route, and all of a sudden my phone disconnects.
Right.
What's going on, and it's hard to have continuous coverage in all roads, all places in these rural areas. You have to build towers where there is a zero embedded population
Right.
in order to get it right.
Right.
Because the tower will not cover a single house, but it covers a road, which is vital.
Right. And I mean, for safety and for everything else, right?
Exactly.
And for you to have a peaceful dinner when you're eating
When
out.
you're eating out, yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. And so at Comfone, like what is your main business there for roaming at Comfone for those that don't know?
So our big business at Comfone, we have a roaming hub, which covers over 500 operators connected to it.
Wow.
And so
That explains you being on the road a lot.
yeah, that explains a lot of that. But what we do with the hub is, because a roaming agreement takes so much time, so much effort to do, and with the hub we hope to simplify a lot of the effort for people to be able to connect and to get roaming connectivity up and running. And so we take out a lot of the processes that people have to do for that, and we even do the testing on their behalf to make things go smoother. So for regional carriers, when I worked for Union, it was, a no-brainer. Let's, if I can connect through the hub, let's connect through the hub. It's going to save us time and resources to actually make that roaming work.
And as a guy who did it for a long time, you can understand all the things that you're saving by bringing that to them.
Yep.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, and then with Comfone, what is your role there?
So I'm an account and sales rep for the North America region.
Mm-hmm.
So I deal with all the rural carriers, and I can talk to them and try to help them. I mean, that's what I see myself as, and I'm trying to enable them to help their business grow.
Yeah, that's great. It's great. So of all the places that you've been, and I always like to ask these kinds of questions. So what are some standout memories of for work travel, like a place or an event that you've been to that you think, man, that one was really special?
So I would say one of my first meetings I ever had outside of the United States was in Rome, Italy.
I thought you were going to say the dinner with me 15 years ago, but that's all right. Anyway,
that was in the United States.
That was, yeah, that's right. So Rome, you went to Rome?
Went to Rome for the first time, and seeing some of the history of Rome was just fantastic.
Yeah.
And people say, "Oh, well, you got to take time to go to the Vatican Museum." And where I was at, it was I just didn't realize how small Rome was.
Yeah.
If you've never been, I got in my hotel and I figured out how to get on the bus. This was before our cell phones really had maps and told directions, so I had to plan it out a little bit better. I get on the bus, and I was expecting a 20, 30-minute bus ride. 5 minutes later, the bus driver's like, "Get off, because it's the end of the line."
Here we go. Yeah.
I'm like, "But where's the Vatican?" And he pointed. I'm like, "Oh." And so I get off the bus and I look, and I was able to walk to St. Peter's Square.
Yep.
And just get that history inside. And I went to the museum. Oh, there's huge lines. And when I went, there was not a single line for me to get in. So I went at a really good time in Rome.
Yeah.
Which I think made it even better.
Yeah, my Rome experience was not great. So we went to Italy, and we went to Croatia first to see a partner of ours called Infobib, if you know who they are, and that was really cool. And Croatia's very laid back. And then we went to Tuscany with some neighbors, and we stayed there for like 5 days, all very laid back. And you'd barely see anybody. It was like the Wyoming of Italy, right? There's all these small towns. And then just on a whim, my wife and I were like, well, let's just go to Rome for like 5 hours. We had zero plans. We didn't know anything about it. We just went with them because they were flying out of there. And so we were like, yeah, well, and man, it was just as overwhelming as it can be. And I think it's probably like if you were to go to Wyoming for a few days and then go to New York City with zero plans, right? Same kind of thing. It was just, I'm sure it's a cool place, but for us, it was just very overwhelming. So.
Yeah, I mean, 5 hours, you don't have time to do anything.
No, it was
You're not going to get the culture. You're not going to do anything in Rome. So,
yeah.
yeah.
We were red busing it. So
Yep.
yeah. And my last red bus we were talking to before. I'm going to go to Mobile World Congress in Barcelona this year, and I went last year for the very first time because I was supposed to go. I became president of Clear Sky in 2020, and I told my wife that was in April, or no, it was 2019 in April. And I told my wife, I said, the good news about being president is now I get to go to Mobile World Congress because I always got passed over to go. It was always other people that went to Barcelona. And so I told her, I said, nothing's going to stop me from going in 2020. And God had other plans because I got
So we
stopped.
can all blame that on you, huh?
Right. It's all my fault. Right. So I didn't get to go. And so I went this year. And last year, I guess now. No, it was this year, right? February of 25. And I went and I got there and I didn't plan well. So I got in at like 8 in the morning. I'd been up for 12, 13, 14 hours, whatever it was. And they wouldn't let me in my hotel because it was only whatever time. So I got a red bus ticket for $15 or whatever it was, and just went up on top of the red bus and just slept for 5 hours. And I must have gone around the city like 6 or 7 times, and I was sleeping great. So, sometimes you have to adapt. But Mobile World Congress Barcelona, that's not one you go to?
We have representation there, but our offices in Switzerland, it's a lot easier for them to head to Barcelona than it is for us here in the Americas to fly over.
Right. Yeah. So you.
I've been before, but it's not one I always go to. I go to Mobile World Congress Americas.
Oh, you do go to that one? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be going to that as well in October.
In October, yeah.
And then before that, CCA in September, right?
In San Antonio, yeah.
Yeah, that should be a good time. So, looking forward to that. Other than that, like any other plans for big shows after that, or travel?
I am heading to Rome again.
Okay.
There is the WAS meeting actually is in Rome the week after Mobile World Congress Americas.
Oh, okay.
So I'll be over back in the Eternal City.
And so, what do you guys discuss in the WAS meetings? What is that all about?
So WAS is really for roaming, and most people go there to talk to their roaming partners and set up their negotiated IoT discount rates for the year or for whatever it is. And so we go there to talk to the people in roaming.
Okay.
To talk to them and try to work on getting the relationships opened with our hub and all the other services we have for roaming. So that's why we go there.
And so you say, roaming's kind of changed here in the last couple of years, right? Are prices coming down? Prices going up? What is kind of the volatility with roaming?
I've seen prices coming down for the most part, which is, a good news, bad news scenario for operators. The rural carriers, like the prices a little higher because, their networks are more expensive to maintain. A tower here in Orlando is not the same expense to maintain it as a tower in Wyoming.
Yeah. A little harder to get to. A little more expensive to repair and replace.
So with prices going down, it's a good news, bad news scenario because a lot of the carriers, the smaller carriers, also are starting to look into outbound roaming because, their customers want to travel.
Right.
And if they say, hey, the best option is to get this SIM card from this other carrier, they just lost a customer.
Right.
Right. Because that carrier will cover probably in their area as well. And so, they need to look for solutions to do that. And so one of the solutions that's been coming out and one of the big hot topics that happened and is called the travel eSIM.
I've heard a lot about eSIMs over the last couple of years.
And so the purpose of an eSIM is you can have this SIM card when you're international, and the rates are good enough that you can actually use the service. I remember the days where it cost $20,000-$30,000 a gig to use a service, and you have bill shock, and the FCC's coming down on everybody. And
you always hear those stories of that one guy that went somewhere and came back, and it's a $25,000 bill or whatever. Yeah,
and the person can't afford to pay that. And,
right.
And so what do? You write that off, and you lose him as a customer forever, and probably all his friends and family that he told, that they did this to me. So,
Right.
and so it becomes a tricky scenario. But you have the eSIM that will get you to the point where you can afford to roam and let your customers roam. The problem is it's data only. So the voice side and component things, or you still have to open a roaming agreement to get voice and things like that. But
Yeah, I feel like the other problem with eSIMs is just, and again, it's not my gig, right? We're not in that business. We don't have a dog in that hunt. But it just feels like there's a lot of smaller companies that pop up and they have an eSIM solution, and these guys have an eSIM solution, and you just wonder if that's, if that's that you want to go with a trusted brand, I guess.
yeah, and when you're, especially as a carrier marketing this product as yours, well, who are they gonna yell at when something goes wrong?
Always the carrier.
It's always the
Right.
carrier. It's not not the eSIM, and you have no control as to the quality or who they're actually roaming on or things like that when it's an eSIM. But eSIMs are there because some carriers don't want to give a viable, I call it viable roaming rate, right, to others, especially these smaller operators. Well,
Yeah.
I need to make some money on this connection, so that means if you only have 2 or 3 customers roaming a year, I gotta charge you a lot higher rate to make my investment back for actually setting up the roaming relationship, because it is costly
Right.
to set up and to maintain, which is another reason we try to get these connections onto the hub, because the setup and maintenance is so much smaller.
Right.
for
I mean,
the
it definitely makes sense.
operators.
It lends
Yeah.
itself to being a hub type business. So
Exactly.
so it's definitely great. So for soccer or football or whatever you called it, so who's your team? What do you got?
For in the MLS or what? What
See,
do we
I'm
got?
not that cool. I don't know. I mean, if
I,
someone
I got
said,
lots of teams. Just
yeah,
just
you got to
because,
go through
right?
all the. I mean, I watched Ted Lasso, so I know a little bit about the Premier League. But that's I mean, you got to follow some teams,
Got to
right?
follow some teams. Here in the United States, because I grew up in Utah, Real Salt Lake came out
Oh,
when I
okay.
was there, and so I've been a big fan of theirs. Going to their stadium is surreal experience. I've been to games here in Orlando. I love Orlando,
Orlando's a nice. I mean, we've been to a bunch of games here, so.
but the atmosphere inside the stadium here compared to in Salt Lake is completely different.
Oh, really?
And I prefer home games in Salt Lake than here. I love going to the Orlando City games, and
But what's the difference? Because it's pretty loud in there.
um, the fans and how they do things. In Salt Lake, they actually have an anthem they sing before it
Okay.
starts, and so the whole stadium is singing this anthem. After every goal, they sing the anthem again,
Oh, okay. I got it.
and so there's a little things here or there that just make the atmosphere slightly better.
Yeah. No, I can see that. Overseas, though, we had Chelsea and Man City come to Orlando. I think you were gone because I had called to see if you wanted to go to that game. And they played at the, what do they call it now? Camping
Camping
World
World, yeah.
Stadium. Yeah. And it was like 65,000 people. It was raining. Me and my wife and my son who love soccer, we all went. And that experience was completely different. And I told them then, like, I can't imagine what it would be like, to have, and that was what they call a friendly, right? So I can't imagine a meaningful game
with that.
overseas in that same thing, and so that must be just a different level.
So I when I travel, I try to go to games where I go to, and so I've had a few experiences. I've been to a game in Santos, Brazil, and saw Santos play in their home stadium. That was amazing. I've been to a game up in Norway,
Oh, wow.
in Oslo, and saw and the fans there were doing some really fun things to see. Obviously I've been to games in Bern, Switzerland.
Yeah.
Seen the younger boys play. So
Yeah, I was in their stadium because when you
yeah.
guys did your event, your offices are kind of right there at the
We're
stadium.
right there, and
so,
our event was in the stadium itself. Right?
Yeah, that was
so it was
super
kind
cool.
and seeing a game there is amazing. I cheer for the young boys as well. But I got to say, one of the best games I've been to, just experience-wise, is I went to Mobile World Congress right before I joined Comfone, and went to a game in Barcelona.
Oh, wow.
And so I saw Barcelona get to play, and that was another level of crazies and fans.
Yeah, I said to my wife this time because we're going to Barcelona. She's never been, so she's going to go with me to Mobile World Congress. And I said maybe we could go to a soccer game. And my son happened to hear that, and he's like, "You are not going to a Barcelona game without me. Like, there is no,
No
way
way.
you guys are going to do that." So, but yeah, that has to be quite an experience.
And then one of the best experiences I had was actually here in Orlando. You talked about that game with Man City and Chelsea, but we had a Brazil versus the United States came for a friendly.
Oh, okay.
And my mother-in-law was up from Brazil. So my wife's from Brazil. My mother-in-law was up. So I bought tickets for the whole family. We went there together, and everybody except for myself had a Brazilian jersey on.
Oh,
I wore the American jersey.
Okay.
I got to cheer for the home team.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
And then if they're not playing the United States, then I can cheer for Brazil. But,
Right, yeah.
Right.
They're definitely number 2 in your list.
And Brazil got out to a 1-0 lead. And my youngest looked over and he looked at my shirt and said, "Dad, can't you switch your shirts? Because I don't want you to cry when Brazil beats the United States." And then, second half, Pulisic comes and scores off of a free kick and ties it 1-1. And the U.S. had the better chances in the second half. But we ended up the game tied 1-1. And
Okay, so everyone could go home.
everyone could go home without crying.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely like
But
that.
I just thought I'm like, wow, he was 6 at the time. For a 6-year-old, you know how to talk trash.
Yeah, I know. He's already getting into it. We're getting near the end, but I wanted to just ask about, the regional space and, and the challenges that they have, right? So roaming is just one of those challenges. Are there others that, that you think about when you think about the regional carriers and the problems they're having?
Yeah, another challenge, and I know this affected us a lot in my years at Union, was just keeping some talent out in the regional areas.
Yeah.
It's not a place everybody can live in, right?
As witnessed here. But, I mean, you had 17 years.
I had 17 years,
yeah.
but it's, there are people that last less than 2 months there. They're just like, I can't do it. I can't do it. Yeah. It's so small and so difficult to live in these places. You compare that with Florida. My commute to and from work was 5 minutes here in Florida. It's 5 seconds to go to go to my desk because it's home office, right? But there's just challenges with keeping the talent and keeping the people engaged, and so they're always constantly training new people and trying to get people up to speed on how things work.
Yep, especially younger people, I'd imagine too. It's probably hard to keep them, and they want to go someplace else and experience the world or whatever. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a good point. All right, well, you did blow up my format because you have water. But
it's water and wireless today, right?
Water and wireless works just as fine as whiskey and wireless for sure. So, and thanks for taking time out of your schedule, of course. Even though you live close, you're not always close because of your travels. So, but we'll get to a soccer game soon, and thanks for stopping by.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, see you.
Bye.